On my wedding day, when I stopped my stepmom from joining the family photo, she reacted in the most shocking way. She tore my wedding dress in front of all the guests and shouted, "Look at her. Her skin was burned, and she hid it with plastic surgery." Everyone was stunned. My fiancé, influenced by the chaos, canceled the wedding and left the venue. My controlling father remained silent, merely watching the drama unfold. I cried for help, but no one stood by me. My stepmom laughed triumphantly, satisfied that her plan had worked. However, little did she know, I had a secret revenge plan, and by the very next day, she was on her knees. My name is Nancy Carter, and I'd like to tell you a story, my story. It's not one of fairy tales or perfect endings, but one of betrayal, resilience, and finding strength when the world feels like it's falling apart. I grew up with my dad, Robert. He's a kind man, but ever since my mom passed away when I was young, he's struggled to find his footing. A few years after her death, he remarried Sophia, my stepmother. At first, I wanted to give her a chance, to believe she could bring something good into our lives. But Sophia wasn't that kind of woman. She was manipulative, jealous, and petty. My success, my independence, it all seemed to bother her. She would throw snide remarks at me, undermine me whenever she could, and often made my dad feel like I was the problem. Still, I tried to stay strong. I built a career I was proud of as a businesswoman. Every achievement I earned felt like a small victory against the constant negativity Sophia brought into my life. But there was one thing I kept private, something I wasn't ready to share with anyone. I had undergone plastic surgery to remove a few minor skin spots. It was a deeply personal decision, and I didn't want anyone, especially Sophia, to know. I knew how she would twist it, turning something so simple into ammunition against me. My wedding day should have been the happiest day of my life. I was marrying Jake Miller, the man I loved, and I had dreams of starting a new chapter with him. Jake was everything I'd hoped for, kind, supportive, and grounded. His parents, however, were a bit different. They cared a lot about appearances and what other people thought. Still, I was hopeful that love would outweigh everything else. As I was getting ready that morning, Sophia made her way to the bridal suite. She had this smug look on her face, like she was waiting for an opportunity to strike. When it came time for family photos, she insisted on being in one of them. Normally, I might have let it slide, but I was tired of always giving in to her. I said no. I didn't want her toxic energy in what was supposed to be a happy memory. That's when everything spiraled out of control. Sophia's voice cut through the room, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. "Nancy doesn't want me in the photo because she's hiding something," she said, her tone sharp and accusing. My heart sank as she continued, louder this time, "You all should know, her perfect skin isn't real. She had plastic surgery because her skin was burned, and she's been hiding it." The room fell silent, and I felt the weight of every eye on me. My mind raced as I tried to process what she'd just done, but she wasn't finished. She stormed toward me and, before I could react, grabbed the fabric of my wedding dress and yanked it. The sound of the fabric tearing echoed in the room, and I froze as the dress fell apart, exposing the scars from my surgery. Gasps filled the air, and I felt like the ground had disappeared beneath me. "See?" Sophia shouted, her voice dripping with triumph. "She's been hiding this from everyone." I couldn't breathe. The humiliation was suffocating, and I couldn't even look at Jake. My mind screamed for him to defend me, to do something, but he didn't. His parents were the first to react. His mother whispered something to him, and before I knew it, he was walking away with them, leaving me alone in the middle of the chaos. "The wedding is off," Jake's father declared loudly enough for everyone to hear. My world shattered in that moment. I turned to my dad, desperate for support, for him to say something, anything. But he just stood there, his eyes avoiding mine, silent as Sophia smirked in the background. She had planned this, I realized. She wanted this moment, and she had succeeded. Tears blurred my vision as I stumbled out of the room. The whispers, the shocked faces, the pitying glances, they all felt like knives stabbing into me. I collapsed in a quiet corner of the venue, my heart breaking into pieces. How could this have happened? How could someone be so cruel? As I sat there, trying to catch my breath, I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Lily, my cousin. She knelt beside me, her eyes filled with empathy and determination. "Nancy, this isn't the end," she said softly. "You don't deserve this. We're going to get through it." Her words sparked something in me, a faint glimmer of resolve. But it wasn't enough to drown out Sophia's laughter in the distance. She had won this battle, but deep down, I knew the war wasn't over. I wiped my tears, the humiliation still raw, but I promised myself one thing in that moment. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. Whatever it took, I would make her pay for what she had done. Little did I know, the journey ahead would uncover secrets far darker than I could have imagined. I didn't leave my house for days after the wedding. The humiliation, the betrayal, it all replayed in my mind like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sophia tearing my dress, Jake walking away, and the pitiful looks of the guests. It wasn't just the pain of being abandoned at the altar, it was the feeling of being exposed, reduced to nothing by someone who had made it her mission to ruin me. Lily stayed with me through it all. She didn't let me sink completely into despair, even when I wanted to. One evening, as I sat on the couch staring blankly at the wall, she placed a mug of tea in my hands and sat beside me. "Nancy," she said firmly, her voice breaking through the fog of my thoughts. "You can't let her win. She's been trying to tear you down for years, and this, what she did at the wedding, this was her ultimate move. If you give up now, she gets everything she wanted." I looked at her, my voice barely above a whisper. "What am I supposed to do, Lily? She destroyed my life. Jake is gone. His parents hate me. Everyone at that wedding saw everything. How do I come back from that?" She leaned in, her eyes full of determination. "You fight back. Sophia's not some invincible force. She's just a bitter, cruel woman. And I bet if we dig deep enough, we'll find out that she's hiding something too. You're not the only one with secrets." Her words planted a seed in my mind. Sophia had always been calculated, always a step ahead. But what if I could turn the tables? What if I could expose her for who she really was? That night, I made the decision. I wasn't going to let Sophia's cruelty define my life. I contacted a private investigator, Ryan Blake, the next day. I told him everything, how Sophia had tormented me for years, how she had humiliated me at my wedding, and how I needed to know the truth about her. Ryan listened carefully, his expression serious. "I'll look into it," he said, his voice steady. "People like her often have skeletons in their closet. It's just a matter of finding them." The next few weeks felt like an eternity. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart raced, hoping it was Ryan with news. In the meantime, I tried to pick up the pieces of my life. My dad, still under Sophia's thumb, avoided me. Jake didn't call, and I didn't have the courage to reach out to him. Then one evening, Ryan called. His voice was calm, but carried an edge of urgency. "Nancy, I think you're going to want to hear this in person," he said. "Can you meet me tomorrow?" The next day, I sat across from Ryan in his small office, my hands trembling slightly as I waited for him to speak. He placed a folder on the desk between us and slid it toward me. "Sophia has been involved in illegal activities," he began. "Specifically, she's been selling harmful drugs through an underground network. It's not just a minor operation. These drugs have caused significant harm to people. And she's been doing it for years." I stared at him, my mind struggling to process what I was hearing. "Illegal drugs?" I repeated, my voice shaking. He nodded. "She's clever about it. Most of her dealings are done through intermediaries, but I've gathered enough evidence to connect her directly to the operation. Bank records, phone logs, even testimonies from people who've dealt with her. It's all in that folder." I opened the folder and began flipping through the documents. Each piece of evidence felt like a puzzle piece falling into place, revealing a picture of a woman far more dangerous than I had imagined. "Does my dad know about this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Ryan shook his head. "From what I can tell, he's completely in the dark. She's been careful to keep her business separate from him. The anger that had been simmering inside me since the wedding began to boil over. This wasn't just about what Sophia had done to me. This was about what she had done to countless others, the lies she had built her life on, and the people she had hurt along the way. I want to take her down, I said, my voice steady with determination. I want to make sure she pays for everything she's done. Ryan nodded. With this evidence, you have a strong case. You'll need a good lawyer, though. Someone who can handle something this big. I contacted Sarah Davis, a lawyer known for her no-nonsense attitude and sharp legal mind. When I explained the situation, she agreed to help without hesitation. People like Sophia thrive because no one stands up to them, Sarah said during our first meeting. But we're going to change that. She's not going to get away with this. The next steps were daunting. Filing a case, preparing for the inevitable backlash. It felt like I was gearing up for war. But for the first time since the wedding, I felt a spark of hope. Sophia had spent years trying to break me, but now I had the power to fight back. As I left Sarah's office that day, I couldn't help but smile. Sophia had no idea what was coming, but soon, the truth would catch up with her. And this time, I wasn't going to back down. As the case against Sophia began to take shape, I could feel the tension building. Every step felt like a mix of progress and dread, but I knew there was no turning back. Sarah was relentless in her work, and Ryan continued to uncover more about Sophia's hidden dealings. What started as a tangled web of deceit was now becoming clear and undeniable. My first challenge was telling my father. Despite everything, he was still my dad, and I didn't want him blindsided when the truth came out. One evening, I invited him over to my apartment. He looked uneasy, avoiding eye contact, and I could tell Sophia had already started spinning her narrative. "Nancy," he began, his voice hesitant, "Sophia said you're trying to cause trouble for the family. I know things have been difficult, but..." I cut him off. "Dad, stop. I need you to listen to me. This isn't about family drama. It's about the truth." I slid the folder Ryan had prepared across the table to him. "You need to see this." As he flipped through the pages, his face paled. His hands shook slightly as he read through the evidence of Sophia's involvement in the illegal drug trade. When he finally looked up at me, his eyes were filled with disbelief. This can't be true," he whispered. "She wouldn't." "She would," I said firmly. "And she has. For years, Dad. She's been lying to you, to everyone. She's not the person you think she is." He sat back in his chair, his shoulders slumping as the weight of the truth settled on him. "I didn't see it," he murmured. "All this time, I thought." His voice trailed off. "I need you to stand with me," I said, leaning forward. "This isn't just about what she's done to me. It's about everything she's done to hurt people, to destroy lives. We can't let her get away with this." He nodded slowly, the fight draining from his expression. "You're right. I've let her control me for too long. I'll support you, Nancy. Whatever you need." For the first time in years, I felt a flicker of connection with my dad. It wasn't enough to erase the past, but it was a start. The court date came faster than I expected. Walking into that courthouse felt like stepping into a battlefield. Sophia was there, of course, with her sharp suit and an expression that oozed confidence. But I noticed something different. There was a crack in her facade, a flicker of unease in her eyes. She knew the walls were closing in. Sarah was brilliant in the courtroom, presenting the evidence with precision and clarity. Ryan's findings were ironclad, and the testimonies from people Sophia had hurt painted a damning picture. As the days went on, Sophia's confidence began to waver. Her lawyer scrambled to counter the evidence, but it was clear they were fighting a losing battle. When the verdict was finally announced, the room was silent. The judge's words were firm and final. Sophia was guilty on all counts. She would face prison time for her crimes. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. It was over. She was finally going to pay for everything she had done. But the moment wasn't just about her. It was about me reclaiming my life. As Sophia was led out of the courtroom in handcuffs, she turned to me, her eyes filled with fury. "You think you've won?" she hissed. "This isn't over." I didn't flinch. "It is for you," I said calmly. For the first time, I felt free from her shadow. After the trial, my dad came to me, his face lined with regret. "Nancy, I'm so sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I should have seen what she was doing. I should have stood up for you sooner." I nodded, tears stinging my eyes.
Thank you, Dad.
That means more than you know. The aftermath of the trial brought a whirlwind of emotions. I heard whispers of Sophia's business associates facing similar investigations, and I knew the ripple effect of her actions was only beginning. My dad filed for divorce, cutting ties with her completely. He was trying to rebuild his life, and so was I. But the most unexpected moment came a few weeks later when Jake and his parents showed up at my door. My first instinct was to slam it in their faces, but something in Jake's eyes stopped me. He looked ashamed, broken in a way I hadn't seen before. "Nancy," he began, his voice trembling, "I was wrong. We were all wrong. I let my parents' judgment cloud my own, and I let Sophia manipulate me. I'm so sorry for what I did to you." His parents echoed his apology, admitting their mistake in believing Sophia's lies. For a long moment, I didn't know what to say. I wanted to scream, to tell them they didn't deserve a second chance. But deep down, I knew forgiveness wasn't about them. It was about me. "I need time," I said finally. "If you're serious about making things right, it's going to take more than words." Jake nodded, his eyes filled with determination. "I'll do whatever it takes." It wasn't an easy decision, but it was the beginning of something new. My life was finally moving forward, and for the first time in years, I felt like I was in control. As I sat in my apartment, reflecting on everything that had happened, I realized just how much my life had changed. In a matter of months, I had gone from a woman humiliated and broken on her wedding day to someone who had stood up against a lifetime of manipulation and cruelty. But my journey wasn't over yet. After Sophia's conviction and my father's decision to divorce her, there was a sense of closure. The weight of her toxic influence had been lifted, not just from my life but from my father's as well. For the first time in years, I saw him as the man he used to be, kind, thoughtful, and determined to make things right. He visited me often, bringing me flowers or cooking meals as a way to apologize for the years he had stood by silently while Sophia tore me down. One evening, over dinner, he looked at me and said, "Nancy, I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about standing up for what's right. I want you to know I'm proud of you. You've shown more courage than I ever did, and I'll never stop trying to make up for the past." His words brought tears to my eyes.
Thank you, Dad, I said softly.
That means everything to me. Meanwhile, Jake had been working hard to prove he deserved a second chance. He wrote me letters, apologizing again and again for abandoning me when I needed him most. He showed up at my workplace with small, thoughtful gifts, nothing extravagant, just reminders that he was thinking of me. And his parents, once so cold and judgmental, were doing their best to rebuild the bridge they had burned. But forgiveness wasn't easy. Every time I saw Jake, I remembered the pain of that day, the way he had walked away without even trying to defend me. It wasn't something I could forget overnight. Still, I could see that he was genuine in his efforts. He wasn't the same man who had left me standing alone in that wedding hall. One day, he asked to meet me at the park where we used to go when we were dating. I hesitated, unsure if I was ready for what he might say. But something in me told me to go. When I arrived, he was already there, holding a small bouquet of daisies, my favorite flowers. He smiled nervously as I approached. "Nancy," he began, "I know I've said this 100 times, but I need you to hear it again.
I'm so sorry.
I let you down in the worst way possible, and I'll never forgive myself for that. But I love you, and I want to spend the rest of my life making it up to you if you'll let me." I looked at him, my heart heavy with emotions I couldn't quite untangle. "Jake," I said slowly, "what happened at the wedding, it broke something in me. It made me question everything, including us. But I can see how hard you've been trying, and I can see that you mean it. If we're going to move forward, it has to be on new terms. No more doubts, no more letting other people influence our lives. It has to be about us, and only us." His eyes lit up with hope. "Absolutely," he said, taking my hands in his. "It's just us from now on. I promise." For the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace. Maybe we could rebuild what we had lost. Maybe there was a future for us after all. Months later, we had a small, intimate wedding. It wasn't the grand affair we had originally planned, but it was perfect in its simplicity. Surrounded by close friends and family, including my dad, who beamed with pride, I said I do to the man who had fought to win back my trust. As I looked into Jake's eyes, I knew this was the beginning of a new chapter, one built on honesty and resilience. Sophia's shadow no longer loomed over my life. She was serving her sentence, and her name was rarely mentioned in our family anymore. My father continued to rebuild his life, and our relationship grew stronger every day. And Lily, my steadfast, loyal cousin, remained my rock, reminding me of the strength I had found within myself. In the end, I realized that the scars Sophia had exposed on my wedding day weren't something to be ashamed of. They were a part of my story, a testament to everything I had overcome. They were proof that I could rise from the ashes, stronger and more determined than ever. As I stood in my new home with Jake, looking out at the city skyline, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. My journey hadn't been easy, and there were moments when I thought I'd never recover from the pain. But I had survived. I had fought back. And I had reclaimed my life. Sometimes I think back to that moment at the wedding when Sophia tore my dress and exposed my scars. What she thought would be my downfall turned out to be my greatest source of strength. She showed the world my vulnerabilities, but she also gave me the courage to stand tall and fight for what I deserved. This is my story, a story of betrayal and revenge, but also of resilience, justice, and finding love again. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. No matter how dark things seem, there's always a way to rise again. You just have to believe in your own strength,